Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to apologize for this intrusion. Unfortunately, I'm at a loss for a better way to get your attention. You'll see that I have made no alterations to your page. You also have my word that I'm not taking any liberties with your personal information. And if you dislike this message, you're always free to delete it. I think that you will see that I have no malicious intentions. To the contrary, I'm trying to help you. I hope this is of some consolation, and I hope that you will forgive me. I think that you have noticed that there is something very wrong with the way that we are living. Something that goes to the very source of our worldview is deeply flawed. We learn not to question a very fundamental premise that is harming many aspects of our lives. Errors in the premises of our thinking will propagate through all conclusions that we draw. When a structure is built on a poor foundation, this error will affect the entire building and result in deep flaws in the finished product. The realm of ideas operates in the same fashion. Bad assumptions will corrupt the conclusions of even the best logic. We currently see it in Morton's Fork. That is, a choice between two alternatives we assume to be unavoidable. We accept the assumption that in order for men to live peaceably with each other, we must be divided between either controlling forces and subservient forces. Kings and peasants, master and slave, ruler and the ruled. Although we do not have a king in name today, the situation has scarcely changed. In this country, founders hope to create a society of free men. Instead of a true revolution, we've had a sort of coup of the head of state. The king has been replaced by this vague idea of the collective, the popular vote, the state. The end result is a faceless government with the voice of only the most influential. The existence of this power relationship is a foregone conclusion. Control is assumed to be essential. We've looked so long at the Hobbesian myth that we have made ourselves blind to the alternatives. We can scarcely imagine a life without a master above us. As a result of our flawed premises, neither the slaves or the masters are really free. The course of their lives are determined by the system that they will not deny.
Q. Howard.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad.
Again, total power in one person's hands, not the American way. These damn bills that come out here all the damn time, come out here at the last second, and I gotta try to figure out how to vote for my people. How ashamed of you should be. You should be ashamed of yourselves. I'm sick of it. Every year, we give power to one person. It was not made that way in the Constitution. He was around when it was written. Now we pass rules that stop each one of us. Enough! I feel like somebody trying to be released from Egypt. Let my people go!
But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The big, the wealthy, the real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. They're irrelevant. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets, and they own all the big media news, all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right.
They are angry because they understand that Wall Street received the largest taxpayer bailout in the history of the world. But it was not just the $700 billion that Congress approved through the TAR program. As a result of an independent audit that some of us helped to bring about in the Dodd-Frank bill, we learned, Madam President, that the Federal Reserve provided a jaw-dropping $16 trillion in virtually zero-interest loans to every major financial institution in this country, to central banks all over the world, to large corporations in America, and in fact to even wealthy individuals. And what the American people are saying is if the Fed could provide $16 trillion to large financial institutions, why cannot they begin to move to protect homeowners, unemployed workers, and the middle class of this country? Madam President, the American people are looking around them, and they are angry not just because unemployment is high. They're angry not just because millions of people have lost their homes and their life savings. They are angry because they understand that the middle class of this country is collapsing, poverty is increasing, while at the same time the people on top are doing phenomenally well. They, the taxpayers of this country, bail out Wall Street, and Wall Street recovers, Wall Street does well, but now we have kids in this country graduating college, deeply in debt, can't find a job. We have older workers losing their jobs, and people are saying, what is going on in America? The American people ultimately, I believe, are angry because they are looking at this great country, a country which many of our veterans fought and died for. And what they are seeing is that this nation is losing its middle class, is losing its democratic values, and in fact is moving toward an oligarchic form of government where a handful of billionaires control the economic and political life of this nation.
Does the government work for us or do we work for the government? Is freedom in America a myth or is it a reality? Tonight, what if it's a myth? What if the government played you like a harp? What if it needed to manufacture consensus in order to justify its rule? What if most people were apathetic to the machinations of government, ignorant of its workings, and downright contemptuous about the things that new government was doing? What if government weren't of the people, by the people, or for the people? What if those were just phrases used to centralize power, distance it from the people, and eventually control the people? What if you were being controlled by the government and you didn't even know it? What if you thought you were free, but in reality your freedom was limited only to government-approved options? What if the Republicans and the Democrats actually referred to two wings of one political party, and that was the only party you could support? What if the so-called public opinion was actually just a reflection of the opinions acceptable to our ruling elites? What if matters of public policy were boiled down to two choices, not for simplicity's sake, but to prevent you from considering the ideas of other options that also exist? What if the ruling elites riled us up over our differences on opinions of marginal issues and of marginal importance in order to distract us from the truth that we disagree with on important issues, policies that don't change even when the political parties in power do change? What if you had two choices, but they both supported more debt, more government, more war, and less freedom? What if even those labeled as political mavericks were simply a mix and match of the two choices the government gives you? What if the actual folks whose ideas fall outside the mainstream were ignored? What if the real mavericks were blacked out? What if their opinions were kept from you? What if when they got too popular, they got vilified and mocked and attacked instead of ignored, even as their rhetoric and their ideas are co-opted by the elites who don't even believe in them? What if government were the cause of our malaise? And what if, in order to cloud our understanding of the corrosive effects of government, the government instead pitted us against each other?
We owe $70 trillion.
I understand that, but
to walk out a $4 trillion solution, which is basically just a way for the Democrats to avoid dealing with this until 2017. I'm not here to talk about plans to deal with this till 2017. I'm saying we've got a real problem, and I'm tired of Republicans and Democrats who either want Republicans who want to burn the place to the ground, and Democrats, with all due respect, who want to offer a plan that gets it through their end of their second term of their presidency, and then screws me and my kids when it's over. And until we do that, we have to deal with the extraction that is at foot. It is the reason the financial markets are behaving the way they're behaving. That is a mathematical fact. This is not some opinion. This is a mathematical fact. Tens of trillions of dollars are being extracted from the United States of America. Democrats aren't doing it. Republicans are not doing it. An entire integrated system, financial system, trading system, taxing system that was created by both parties over a period of 2 decades is at work on our entire country right now. And we're sitting here arguing about whether we should do the $4 trillion plan that kicks the can down the road for the president for 2017 or burn the place to the ground. Both of which are reckless, irresponsible, and stupid. And the fact of the matter is, until we actually, and I'm sorry to lose my temper, but I tell you what, I've been coming on TV for 3 years doing this. And the fact of the matter is that there's a refusal on both the Democratic and the Republican side of the aisle to acknowledge the mathematical problem, which is that the United States of America is being extracted. It's being extracted through banking, it's being extracted through trade, and it's being extracted through taxation. And there's not a single politician that has stepped forward, Susan, to deal with it.
The $700 billion bailout for Wall Street is being driven by fear, not fact. This is too much money in too short a time going to too few people while too many questions remain unanswered. Why aren't we having hearings on the plan we just received? Why aren't we questioning the underlying premise of the need for a bailout with taxpayers' money? Why have we not even considered any alternatives other than to give $700 billion to Wall Street? Why aren't we asking Wall Street to clean up its own mess? Why aren't we passing new laws to stop the speculation which triggered this? Why aren't we putting up new regulatory structures to protect the investors? How do we even value the $700 billion in toxic assets? Why aren't we directly helping homeowners with their debt burden? Why aren't we helping American families faced with bankruptcy? Why aren't we reducing debts for Main Street instead of Wall Street? Isn't it time for fundamental change in our debt-based monetary system so we can free ourselves from the manipulation of by the Federal Reserve and the banks? Is this the United States Congress or the board of directors of Goldman Sachs? Wall Street is a place of bears and bulls. It's not smart to force taxpayers to dance with bears or to follow closely behind the bulls.
The United States has been in Afghanistan for more than 10 years. President Obama insists we will remain in Afghanistan until the end of 2014. Why? What's going to be accomplished by staying in that godforsaken hellhole for another 20 months that hasn't been accomplished in 10.5 years? Events are beginning to conspire against the U.S. mission there. We had pictures of U.S. Marines urinating on dead bodies. We had the accidental burning of the copies of the Quran, which further inflamed the hatred of the American presence there. And now we have a U.S. soldier allegedly massacring 16 Afghan civilians, including women and children. The Taliban are threatening to begin beheading U.S. soldiers in response to this latest outrage. Yet the Obama White House is out with a statement insisting that none of this will deter us from our mission. Which is what exactly? I have no idea what the hell we're still doing there anymore. Isn't Osama bin Laden dead? The Karzai government is a puppet regime, barely friendly to our government, and the rest of the country hates our guts. Not unlike the way we might feel if an army of occupation had taken up residence here in the United States and begun desecrating our dead, burning our Bibles, and massacring our women and children. Not to be cynical, but it's my nature. The one thing that might hasten our departure from Afghanistan is if President Obama's re-election campaign is in trouble come Labor Day. Suddenly, with the second term in doubt, my guess is he might decide to move up the timetable for bringing our troops home. Hey, whatever it takes. I don't know about you. I've had a belly full of Afghanistan.
But I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
Here, you may be delegates of your government, business people, organizers, reporters, or politicians, but really, your mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, aunts and uncles, and all of you are someone's child. I'm only a child, yet I know we are all part of a family, 5 billion strong. In fact, 30 million species strong. And borders and governments will never change that. I'm only a child, yet I know we are all in this together and should act as one single world towards one single goal. In my anger, I am not blind, and in my fear, I am not afraid of telling the world how I feel. In my country, we make so much waste. We buy and throw away, buy and throw away, buy and throw away, and yet northern countries will not share with the needy. Even when we have more than enough, we are afraid to share. We are afraid to let go of some of our wealth. In Canada, we live the privileged life, with plenty of food, water, and shelter. We have watches, bicycles, computers, and television sets. The list could go on for 2 days. 2 days ago, here in Brazil, we were shocked when we spent time with some children living on the streets. This is what one child told us. I wish I was rich. And if I were, I would give all the street children food, clothes, medicines, shelter, and love and affection. If a child on the streets who has nothing is willing to share, why are we who have everything still so greedy? I can't stop thinking that these are children my own age, that it makes a tremendous difference where you are born. That I could be one of those children living in the favelas of Rio. I could be a child starving in Somalia, or a victim of war in the Middle East, or a beggar in India.
And I tried hard to be proud of my service, but all I could feel was shame. And racism could no longer mask the reality of the occupation. These were people, these were human beings. I've since been plagued by guilt anytime I see an elderly man, like the one who couldn't walk, who we rolled onto a stretcher and told the Iraqi police to take him away. I feel guilt anytime I see a mother with her children, like the one who cried hysterically and screamed that we are worse than Saddam as we forced her from her home. I feel guilt anytime I see a young girl, like the one I grabbed by the arm and dragged into the street. We were told we were fighting terrorists. The real terrorist was me, and the real terrorism is this occupation. Racism within the military has long been an important tool to justify the destruction and occupation of another country. It has long been used to justify the killing, subjugation, and torture of another people. Racism is a vital weapon employed by this government. It is a more important weapon than a rifle, a tank, a bomber, or a battleship. It is more destructive than an artillery shell, or a bunker buster, or a Tomahawk missile. While those weapons are created and owned by this government, they are harmless without people willing to use them. Those who send us to war do not have to pull a trigger or lob a mortar round. They do not have to fight the war, they merely have to sell the war. They need a public who is willing to send their soldiers into harm's way. They need soldiers who are willing to kill and be killed without question. They can spend millions on a single bomb, but that bomb only becomes a weapon when the ranks of the military are willing to follow orders to use it. They can send every last soldier anywhere on Earth, but there will only be a war if soldiers are willing to fight. And the ruling class, the billionaires who profit from human suffering, care only about expanding their wealth, controlling the world economy. Understand that their power lies only in their ability to convince us that war, oppression, and exploitation is in our interest. They understand that their wealth is dependent on their ability to convince the working class to die to control the market of another country. And convincing us to kill and die is based on their ability to make us think that we are somehow superior.
This was meant to be the first post-ideological generation, right? This was meant to be the generation that never thought of anything bigger than our Facebook profiles and our TV screens. This was meant to be the generation where the only thing that Saturday night meant was X Factor. I think now that claim is quite ridiculous. I think now that claim is quite preposterous. I think now we've shown that we are as ideological as ever before. Now we've shown that solidarity and comradeship and all those things that used to be associated with students are as relevant now as they've ever been. You know, the most incredible thing that happened on Wednesday, I went down, I thought I was going to go down in lunch break and then get back in time for lessons. Perhaps I should have known they'd put the guy in charge of the G20 in charge. Perhaps I should have been more concerned for my life than for whether I was going to get down for lessons. But when I tried to get out and I was told it was a sterile area by police officers standing and not letting anyone out, I thought, well, that's why we need a university education. If we don't get one, we end up in police uniforms. You know, when I was kettled in there, I was with thousands and thousands of school students who'd come down with their ties around their heads in their school uniforms, and yeah, they were cold, who'd come down, who'd never been on a protest before, who'd never joined a political party or been involved in a political movement before, who didn't have any economic knowledge or political degrees, but they were there because they believed in something. They were there because they believed in something bigger, and they were there because they knew that either... You know, there weren't a million choices, there were two choices. Either they laid down and took whatever the government threw at them, or they stood up and fought back. And so those school students who'd never been involved in anything before stood up and they fought back.
You've been fantastic, and I hope you enjoyed it. There is a point. Is there a point to all this? Let's find a point. Is there a point to my act? I would say there is. I have to. The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because... this is just a ride, and we kill those people. Shut him up. We have a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account and my family. This has to be real. It's just a ride. But we always kill those good guys who try and tell us that. You ever notice that? And let the demons run amok? But it doesn't matter, because it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride.
Take all that money we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which it would many times over, not one human being excluded, and we can explore space.
Madam Speaker, I have a few questions for my colleagues. What if our foreign policy of the past century is deeply flawed and has not served our national security interests? What if we wake up one day and realize that the terrorist threat is a predictable consequence of our meddling in the affairs of others and has nothing to do with us being free and prosperous? What if propping up repressive regimes in the Middle East endangers both the United States and Israel? What if occupying countries like Iraq and Afghanistan and bombing Pakistan is directly related to the hatred directed toward us? What if someday it dawns on us that losing over 5,000 American military personnel in the Middle East since 9/11 is not a fair trade-off for the loss of nearly 3,000 American citizens, no matter how many Iraqi, Pakistani, and Afghan people are killed or displaced? What if we finally decide that torture, even if called enhanced interrogation technique, is self-destructive and produces no useful information, and that contracting it out to a third world nation is just as evil? What if it is finally realized that war and military spending is always destructive to the economy? What if all wartime spending is paid for through the deceitful and evil process of inflating and borrowing? What if we finally see that wartime conditions always undermine personal liberty?
We Americans are who we are today because we fought a war to be rid of the British royal family, because we decided we didn't want some unelected king waging wars on a whim and throwing people in dungeons without a trial. So it's kind of funny that America wound up with an executive branch that now wages war on a whim and throws people in dungeons without a trial. Henry VIII had the Tower of London. We have Guantanamo Bay. The only difference? The Tower of London is closed. I guess I won't wait for the... Our next president might as well be Henry VIII, a big, fat, egomaniacal blowhard with a string of wives. But even if we don't elect Newt Gingrich... The expansion of powers is terrifying. President Bush overturned decades of law saying that we can't torture people simply by having a lawyer write a memo, which ironically was entitled, "Yes, we can." In fact, after 9/11, Congress passed a resolution that basically said Bush could do anything. One day he was a dry drunk showing Lee Greenwood around the Rose Garden. The next day he was Zeus shooting lightning from his fingertips. It was like making Charlie Sheen an actual warlock. And Obama has given almost none of those powers back. He can search you without a warrant, arrest you without charges, and hold you indefinitely. And the President of the United States is allowed to order the murder of American citizens without a trial. I know that's not really frightening, like giving them health care.
Why is America not the greatest country in the world, Professor? That's my answer.
You're saying...
Yes.
Let's talk about... Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of our paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always?
Hey.
And with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom?
Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom.
The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom. All right. And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite?
I don't know about you, but I've met a lot of people in my life, and I can't, to my knowledge, recall anyone who wanted a war, who had any interest in wars, who felt that wars were anything but horrific and to be avoided. So I thought, how come the world's been awash with wars throughout this century? Who's behind them? Or what? Or why? Then I kind of looked at this economic system that controls the world. An economic system that is so sane that the more successful it is in its own terms, the quicker it destroys the planet. It's the perfect environmental and human assassin. It insists every year that we take more from the earth even quicker, turn it into even more things, sell even more things, consume even more things, throw away even more things, to worship the real God of the modern world, economic growth. It insists that every year 20% of the people of the world consume 80% of the resources, while leaving the other 80% to get by on the other 20%. Crazy. Of course it is.
Wake up, Neo. The Matrix has you. You just have to see through the illusion, or you'll rue your delusion. In your confusion, you've been deluded into living in a prison of your own choosing. Do you find it amusing to be fed doo-doo by the nightly news, made to crave Gucci shoes, while ignoring the real issue? The extraordinarily disproportionate concentration of wealth in the hands of a few. 2 twos, you want to cruise the new venues and have a few brews, while the third world sings the blues and reptiles abuse humans. Over 1,000 children starving to death every hour for the want of some food. Pardon me for being rude, but while you choose to snooze, our rulers amuse themselves, puppeteering human conflict and directing the daily drama, turning you into a fallacious farmer, sowing unconsciousness and expecting to reap good karma. You think the Dalai Lama can't see farther than that? It's time to clean up your act. Wake up, Neo. The Matrix has you. Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is all around you. It confounds you and astounds you. Its evil genius is bound to arouse the sound of women crying and babies dying. So pay close attention, because I ain't lying. Neo, I'm counting on you. And the countdown started. Rotted. You catch on fast, kid. It seems you get my meaning. It seems you're feeling me, because I'm appealing to the divine in you, the sublime spark of light in you, shining through every single sinew within you, the part of you that really wants to take the red pill and not the blue.
When the universe was created, the initial separation of the one into the two and then into the three, an opposite is created in order to have something to pit your ideas against, an opposition, because you can only have growth through opposition, through having your ideas challenged. I have had my ideas challenged many a time in the last year doing Love Police. I don't even know where I stand. Some days I'm extremely peaceful, other days I am violent in my opinions. But what I do know, one thing I have learned, beneath all the influences of mainstream media, of my family, of my friends, of the various people who watch these videos, is that only I can tell myself what is true for me. I can't really take in anyone else's advice. I am not a historical figure. I do not have the weight of millions of lives on my back. I can only do what's right for me. And as we stand here on the brink of World War III, it's plain to see that this isn't a war between states. It's a spiritual war between those who seek to control, the psychopaths, who inadvertently find themselves in big corporations and government, because that is the place for psychopaths, in psychopathic institutions. It's a war between the psychopaths and us, the people who just want to live free, who just want free energy, free food. We want a world of abundance. We want a world of nature without the machine, without passports, without security checks, without taxation, without the control. And I, Charlie Veitch, pledge myself to fight. I will fight alongside you. I will fight for humanity. I will fight against this onslaught of the dehumanizing, forward-marching, obedient, drone-like, non-sentient horror of the system we live in.
A few months ago, I understood suddenly how thought was just an illusory thing, and how thought is responsible for, if not all, most of the suffering we experience. And then I suddenly felt like I was looking at these thoughts from another perspective, and I wondered, who is it that's aware that I'm thinking? And suddenly I was thrown into this expansive, amazing feeling of freedom from myself, from my problems. I saw that I was bigger than what I do. I was bigger than my body. I was everything and everyone. I was no longer a fragment of the universe. I was the universe. And ever since that day, I've been trying to get back there.
If this status quo comes at such great cost to its servants, then why do we not cast it off? The answer is in the second result of a master-slave society, violence. Every law and dictate comes with a whisper of a death threat. If you disobey the law and, for instance, refuse to pay taxes because they fund activities you disagree with, like our wars, for example, which you didn't vote on, by the way, then you threaten the status quo. The state can thrive and plunder only if it will harm or kill you for disobedience. Of course, the police and courts will find you first, but if you resist, then you'll be imprisoned. And if you continue to resist, then the police will kill you. No exceptions. Every law, no matter how trivial, will be enforced with violence against you. Remember those words. Against me. A government that operates through coercive force is also pointing its guns at you every single day. Violence and the threat of violence is the only way this system can be maintained. After all, how else can you enforce slavery? Police don't arm themselves with words and flowers. In this country, even talking about resisting the force of government is met with imprisonment or murder. The precedent has already been set. American citizens accused of terrorism, and they don't just mean Muslims, can be indefinitely tortured and killed. All is based on the mere accusation of resisting the violence of government. No proof is necessary. All this has been massively veiled with the guise of our own protection. None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe that they are free.
I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I want you to get up right now. Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change.
How many stations does this go out?
You've got to get mad.
67.
Say,
I know it goes to Louisville and Atlanta.
I'm not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do about the depression and the inflation and the oil crisis. But first, get up out of your chairs, open the window, stick your head out and yell, and say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back, so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later, because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all.
In the United States today, we have the most unequal distribution of wealth and income since the 1920s. Now, you're not going to see what I'm talking about now. You're not going to see it on Fox. You're not going to see it on NBC or CBS. But it's important that we discuss this issue because it is one of the most important issues facing America. Madam President, today, the wealthiest 400 individuals in America own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million people. 400 and 150 million. Today, and this is really quite amazing, the 6 heirs to the Walmart fortune, the Walmart company, of course, started by Sam Walton, his children, one family, now own more wealth than do the bottom 30% of the American people. One family owns more wealth than the bottom 30%, 90 million Americans. Today, the top 1% own 40% of all of the wealth in America. Top 1% own 40% of all the wealth in America. Madam President, what do we think the bottom 60% of the American people own? I ask this question a lot around Vermont. I have a lot of meetings. Say, what top 1% owns 40%? Okay. People say, yeah, we understand. That's not good. We understand that. What are the bottom 60%? People say, well, maybe they own 15%. Maybe they own 20%. Well, the answer is they own less than 2%. Less than 2%. So you got the bottom 60% of the American people owning less than 2% of the wealth. Top 1% own 40% of the wealth. And here's another astounding fact. And again, I know we don't see this too much in the media. Many of my colleagues don't talk about it too often. But incredibly, the bottom 40% of the American people own 0.3% of the wealth of this country.
What if some of the wealthiest among us weren't wealthy because of their own work and effort, but because they knew how to game the government to get what they want? What if the same government that promises to deliver us from the oligarchs is actually controlled by them? What if there were people who shared your discontent with the way things were, but those in the government convinced you that these people with whom you largely agree are really your enemies? What if government thought it knew what was good for you better than you did? What if government didn't see you as the purpose of its existence, but rather as a resource to exploit in order to further its own tenure in power? What if you weren't sovereign, but merely subject to the government? What if you didn't really own your land and your home and your property, but the government did? What if the government could condemn your property and take it from you and pay you for it against your will? What if the government could take your property without paying you for it? What if we were always at war? What if the government always spent more money than it collected? What if the government spent more of its efforts evading and avoiding the Constitution rather than supporting and defending it? What if the president could start any war and kill any foreign dictator that he wished? What if the president could decide that he had so much evidence of someone's guilt that no trial was needed? What if the president made himself judge, jury, and executioner over any American he chose? What if being an American didn't mean waving a flag, supporting the government, right or wrong, and pledging allegiance to a flag, but rather believing in liberty, exercising freedom, and pursuing your own happiness? What if we lived and let live instead of turning into the tools of government to force those who disagree with us to comply with our vision of the world? What if the government were just a gaggle of petty people playing out their power-hungry fantasies at the expense of our rights, our freedoms, and even our humanity? What if government actually is the greatest threat to our safety and freedom and not, as it claims, the guarantor of our safety and of our freedom? What if I'm right and the government is wrong? What if it's dangerous to be right when the government is wrong?
What would you like him to do?
I would like him to go to the people of the United States of America and say, people of the United States of America, your Congress is bought. Your Congress is incapable of making legislation on health care, banking, trade, or taxes, because if they do it, they will lose their political funding and they won't do it. But I'm the President of the United States, and I won't have a country that is run by a bought Congress. So I'm not going to work with a bought Congress and try to be Mr. Big Guy. I'm working with the bought Congress. I'm going to abandon the bought Congress like Teddy Roosevelt did, and I'm going to go to the people of the United States and I'm going to say, you've got a bought Congress. And until we get rid of the bought Congress, which is Jimmy Williams' constant point, which is get the money out of politics, and until a president says that's the problem and says he's going to fix it, there is no policy that I can possibly see, no matter how brilliant your idea may be, or your idea, or my idea, or her idea, or your idea at home, is that idea will not happen as long as there's the capacity to basically fire a politician who disagrees with me by taking funding away from him. Is that a fair assessment?
I come from a family that appreciates service to our country. But how are we serving our troops? By letting them in a situation that is absolutely impossible, where there's greater numbers of them returning home with injuries from IEDs. How are we serving our troops? By telling them we're going to keep extending the period of the war. Who's speaking up truly for our troops here? Is it General Petraeus, who says, well, we'll just keep the war going and maybe we'll send 2,000 troops out of Afghanistan or redirect them by 2014? He doesn't get to make the choice. That choice must be made by the Congress of the United States. It's time that we started to stand up for the Constitution of the United States, which, last I checked, in Article 1, Section 8, provides that Congress has to make the decision whether or not to send our troops into war. We have not the right to give that over to a president, over to a general, or anybody else. This is our prerogative inside this Congress. In 2001, Mr. Speaker, I joined with members of this House in voting for the authorization of military force following the terrorist attacks on 9/11. I don't take a backseat to anyone in standing up to defend this country. But as the United States continues in what is now the longest war in our history, it has become clear that the authorization for military force is being used as a carte blanche for circumventing Congress's role as a co-equal branch of government. I want you to hear this. We're a co-equal branch of government. We're not lapdogs for the president. We're not servants of generals. We are a co-equal branch of government expressing the sovereign will of the American people.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
I am only a child, yet I know if all the money spent on war was spent on finding environmental answers, ending poverty, and finding treaties, what a wonderful place this earth would be. At school, even in kindergarten, you teach us how to behave in the world. You teach us not to fight with others, to work things out, to respect others, to clean up our mess, not to hurt other creatures, to share, not be greedy. Then why do you go out and do the things you tell us not to do? Do not forget why you are attending these conferences, who you're doing this for. We are your own children. You are deciding what kind of a world we are growing up in. Parents should be able to comfort their children by saying, everything's going to be all right. It's not the end of the world, and we're doing the best we can. But I don't think you can say that to us anymore. Are we even on your list of priorities? My dad always says, you are what you do, not what you say. Well, what you do makes me cry at night. You grown-ups say you love us, but I challenge you, please, make your actions reflect your words. Thank you.
Soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen have nothing to gain from this occupation. The vast majority of people living in the U.S. have nothing to gain from this occupation. In fact, not only do we have nothing to gain, but we suffer more because of it. We lose limbs, endure trauma, and give our lives. Our families have to watch flag-draped coffins lowered into the earth. Millions in this country without health care, jobs, or access to education must watch this government squander over $450 million a day on this occupation. Poor and working people in this country are sent to kill poor and working people in another country to make the rich richer. And without racism, soldiers would realize that they have more in common with the Iraqi people than they do with the billionaires who send us to war. I threw families onto the street in Iraq, only to come home and find families thrown onto the street in this country, in this tragic and unnecessary foreclosure crisis. We need to wake up and realize that our real enemies are not in some distant land. They're not people whose names we don't know and cultures we don't understand. The enemy is people we know very well and people we can identify. The enemy is a system that wages war when it's profitable. The enemy is the CEOs who lay us off from our jobs when it's profitable. It's the insurance companies who deny us health care when it's profitable. It's the banks who take away our homes when it's profitable. Our enemy is not 5,000 miles away. They are right here at home. If we organize and fight with our sisters and brothers, we can stop this war, we can stop this government, and we can create a better world.
And so those school students who'd never been involved in anything before stood up and they fought back. And when they were in that kettle, being kettled in by police, you know, the word went round as we were sitting, huddling around fires, sharing out what little food we had, and the word went round, people said, we know what they're up to. We know that they don't think we're a danger to the public. I'm 15 years old, people there were as young as 13. We know they don't think we're going to run riot through the streets of London. We know what they're up to. They think that if they kettle us now, we're not going to come on a demonstration ever again. Well, let the word go out from today, people said. Let the word go out about next Tuesday. Let the word go out about next week and next month and next year that they can't stop us demonstrating. They can't stop us fighting back. And however much they try to imprison us in the streets of London, those are our streets, and we will always be there to demonstrate. We will always be there to fight. People who had always thought that the police were just those people at the other end of the telephone line to help if there was a burglary. People who'd always thought that the media were just those friendly newspaper men who were there to give them that unbalanced picture of the facts. People learnt a lot last Wednesday. People learnt a lot as they huddled round fires and then emerged from that kettle to see headlines like vandals on the Evening Standard that afternoon. People learnt a lot when a police van was left in the middle of the road so that the police could tow it away and show the whole public, look what vandals these people are. People learnt a lot. So the message that goes out from last Wednesday is very clear. We are no longer that post-ideological generation. We are no longer that generation that doesn't care. We are no longer that generation that's prepared to sit back and take whatever they give us. We are now the generation at the heart of the fight back.
What if the American people woke up and understood that the official reasons for going to war are almost always based on lies and promoted by war propaganda in order to serve special interests? What if we as a nation came to realize that the quest for empire eventually destroys all great nations? What if Obama has no intention of leaving Iraq? What if a military draft is being planned for the wars that will spread if our foreign policy is not changed? What if the American people learn the truth, that our foreign policy has nothing to do with national security, that it never changes from one administration to the next? What if war and preparation for war is a racket serving the special interests? What if President Obama is completely wrong about Afghanistan and it turns out worse than Iraq and Vietnam put together? What if Christianity actually teaches peace and not preventive wars of aggression? What if diplomacy is found to be superior to bombs and bribes in protecting America? What happens if my concerns are completely unfounded? Nothing. But what happens if my concerns are justified and ignored? Nothing good. And I yield back the balance of my time.
You know, it's amazing. TV used to give Americans the reverse fantasy. What if you, normal person, suddenly became a millionaire? No. Now it's, oh, who are we kidding? You consider yourself lucky to hold on to your job deep frying chicken parts. But how'd you like to be briefly introduced to a millionaire? Wouldn't you like that? You can touch his garments. And people watch this shit and find it inspirational. It's why they fawn over Donald Trump when he flirts with running for president every 4 years, even though he spends the rest of his time letting 18 people kiss his ass on TV before he fires all but one of them. America's rich aren't giving you money, they're taking your money. Between the years 1980... Between the years 1980 and 2005, 80% of all new income generated in this country went to the richest 1%. Let me put that in terms that even you fat-ass teabaggers, sorry, can understand.
Hey,
Say 100 Americans get together and order 100-slice pizza. The pizza arrives, they open the box, and the first guy takes 80 slices. True.
No, it's not.
And if someone suggests, why don't you just take 79 slices, that's socialism!
Sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men, men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore.
But that's the economic system, take, make and throw away, that controls your life and mine. And that of 6 billion people nearly. So I thought, what's behind this self-destruction? Or who and why? I started to look at some of the other conventional wisdom that we pass on from generation to generation as the only way of doing things in this world. The wisdom that says, even though the economic system that I've just described is dismantling this planet, you ask a politician of any party anywhere in the world, what do we do to get out of this environmental situation? And they will say we must have more growth to raise the money to spend on the environment. If I said to you the way to put out a fire is to pour more petrol on it, you'd say he's out of his mind. But that's what the politicians are saying when they say about more growth to sort out the environment. It's conventional wisdom that it's fine to treat animals as mere commodities, to be made as fat as possible, as quick as possible, on as little food as possible. To condemn every year billions of animals to a lifetime of pain, fear and suffering in the name of economics. You're sane if you judge your success in healthcare not by how many people are healthy, but by how many diseased people you manage to treat. We're treating more patients than ever before. Why? Why are so many people ill?
People think we're crazy, but one day they'll thank us. You see, how can a market be free when members of the same family, the same ancient conspiracy, get to print our money, lend it to our governments, and charge us a usury? It's an unusually cunning plan, this money for old rope. Bankers getting richer while whole countries go broke. Entire populations held in a chokehold of poverty, reduced to criminality, getting used to rat race banality, and paying taxes. So governments can pay back this axis of evil through their tactical patsies. The Federal Reserve Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of France, the Bank of Germany, the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF and the World Bank, see? All privately controlled companies, the directors of which are so rich they're richer than most countries, and make Bill Gates look like a country bumpkin. You see, for some, money does grow on trees. And you've been convinced otherwise with surprising ease. You've been brought to your knees, like these people here, bleeding to death for the want of proper health care and struggling to survive on welfare. We're going to get them the hell out of there before what happened in Argentina happens everywhere. And here's the plan. We're using poetry to tell every man, woman and child across the land that our destiny is in our own hands. And all we have to do is take a stand. And here's how. Stop paying for credit. Stop paying the banker's tax. Use interest-free credit schemes instead. Buy all your consumer durables second-hand. Buy everything else from markets, family businesses and charities only. Stop watching television news. And stop reading newspapers too. And if you work for a publicly limited company, leave your job immediately. And finally, demand that the bankers give back the wealth they've robbed from humanity. Too much to ask of you? Too much for you to do? Go back to sleep then. The Matrix has you.
I'm not a man who has revelations. I do not have a direct connection to the divine, but I do have a mind and a heart and a brain, and I can think and I can see things as they happen. And what I see is a human species which fell. A human species which was living in harmony with nature, but now we don't. Perhaps in the collective subconscious, the depopulation, fear, is correlated to World War III. Maybe this is what is necessary for the improvement of man. Maybe this is our great test. Maybe this is our challenge, our opposition. And I will stand up to the challenge. I will oppose my enemies, and I will stand by my friends. So, if I die in this fight, at least I know that up until my very death, I did not give in. I did not surrender. I was not compromised. And if we're going to philosophize as to what immortality is realizing that you are so much more than your physical, right here, right now body. No one owns you. No Messiah or Guru deserves all your attention. No religion is worthy of your time. No government, no company, no tax form, no other human being can ever tell you what to do. Stand firm, get ready. Arm yourselves physically, philosophically, spiritually, and above all, mentally. This is Charlie Beach for the Love Police, August 21st, 2010.
It's our intention. Our intention is everything. Nothing happens on this planet without it. Not one single thing has ever been accomplished without intention. So I started thinking about my life, and I started thinking about this conference and what we're about, and I looked back and I thought, well, I was two people my whole life. I was in the living room entertaining people, being a monkey, doing my thing for the company, and trying to relieve my mother, who was suffering. She had rheumatoid arthritis and phlebitis and everything under the sun that was nagging at her, and she was depressed. And I wanted her to be free. And I wanted her to realize that her life was worth something because she gave birth to someone who was worth something. And then I would go into my room and I would sit with a legal pad. I was a little kid. And I would sit there and I would try to figure out what it meant, what it was all about. Why are we here? What is this? And one day I read something from Buddha that said that all spirituality is about relieving suffering. And I suddenly realized that's what I'm doing in the other room. and I'm aligned. My purpose is aligned with this.